I didn't realize it immediately. At first, I thought the joint was just stronger than usual. I inhaled like normal, the familiar burn in my lungs, the faint smell of piney smoke, the tiny spark at the tip, but seconds later, the world tilted. Subtly at first, a lean to the left, almost imperceptible, like the floor was made of water. My hands, resting on my knees, felt heavy, then impossibly light, as if gravity itself was indecisive. The first panic hit like a hammer. My vision rippled. The corners of the room curved outward and then inward, folding in impossible ways. The couch stretched unnaturally, growing taller, then shorter. Shadows began to move independently of the light. I rubbed my eyes, but it didn't help. When I opened them again, the walls were alive, breathing, pulsing slowly, expanding and contracting, as if inhaling and exhaling. I tried to speak, to say something normal to ground myself. My voice sounded alien, far away, echoing in the wrong key. Every word I tried to form twisted in my mouth. The syllables became mush, incomprehensible to me, though I could hear them clearly as though spoken by someone else entirely. The dizziness intensified. I staggered to the couch but stumbled as the floor shifted beneath me. My limbs didn't respond in time. My legs felt like liquid, melting beneath my weight. My arms twitched involuntarily. I sank into the couch, but it wasn't solid. It was soft, malleable, alive. My body sank through it as if the cushions were composed of thick, warm water. Panic clawed at my chest. I tried to stand, but the floor felt like gelatin, every step oscillating beneath me. Then the hallucinations hit fully. The first were the colors. They bled everywhere. Walls shimmered in impossible hues. Reds became liquid, running like hot wax down surfaces, pooling on the floor in patterns that seemed deliberate. The carpet rippled with geometric designs, constantly rearranging themselves. Every texture vibrated in ways my eyes couldn't process. Wood grain shifted as if the floorboards were writhing. Fabric on the chairs wriggled like snakes under skin. Figures appeared next. Shadows first, flickering in corners, always at the edge of my vision. When I tried to look directly at them, they vanished, but I could feel them, watching me. Waiting. My pulse skyrocketed. My chest burned, my lungs constricted, and a nausea rose in my stomach. I pressed myself against the wall, but the walls felt hot, almost wet. The edges of the room warped around me, folding inward, making it impossible to gauge distance. I reached for my phone to call someone, anyone. My fingers extended and shrank unpredictably as I tried to grab it. When I finally made contact, the device seemed alive, its surface rippling like water, the icons twisting into tiny faces that blinked at me. I screamed, the sound foreign in my own ears, high-pitched and distorted. Time fractured. Seconds stretched into eternities. I experienced the same 10 steps across the living room dozens of times, each iteration slightly different. The furniture twisted, morphed, grew, shrank. My own hands looked wrong, elongated, bone-thin or bulbous, and malformed. Every attempt to move my limbs resulted in grotesque lag. My brain sent signals that arrived late, uncoordinated, producing jerky alien motions. Then the auditory hallucinations began. Not music, not voices at first, but breathing. Hundreds of breaths. Whispers that weren't quite intelligible, like a language I almost knew. They came from all directions, omnipresent. When I tried to locate them, I couldn't. My ears rang with a high-pitched tone that alternated with low, guttural vibrations, making it impossible to tell where reality ended and hallucination began. I curled onto the couch, but even that comfort betrayed me. The cushions undulated beneath me like a living thing, and I felt a crawling sensation under my skin. Ants? Worms? Or perhaps my nerves themselves were firing in chaotic patterns, creating the illusion of movement beneath my flesh. Every touch felt magnified, my own heartbeat vibrating through my chest, my muscles twitching uncontrollably, every pulse amplified into pain. Time became meaningless. I experienced lifetimes in minutes. My mind fractured into different layers. In one, I was a child, lost in a forest that smelled of ammonia and rot. In another, I was ancient, floating in a void of lightless space, watching countless versions of myself suffer, scream, and dissolve. In yet another, I was crawling across the floor of my apartment, skin blistered, hands twisted, desperately trying to grab something, anything, to anchor me. Faces appeared next, not shadowy, real. Or at least they appeared real. Every reflective surface displayed faces in various states of distortion. Mirrors, glass, phone screens, even the walls themselves sometimes displayed a reflection of me that wasn't me. Mouths stretched impossibly wide. Eyes rolled in unnatural directions. They whispered my name, called out secrets I hadn't admitted aloud, smiled in cruel ways that made my stomach knot. Bodies warped grotesquely. My own shape betrayed me, arms elongated, legs compressed, my torso twisted in impossible spirals. I felt my bones crack and rearrange, muscles pulsing and spasming. I clawed at myself, screaming. Every time I moved, my perception distorted further. Sometimes I was towering over the room. Other times I shrank, trapped inside a miniature version of the space, watching versions of myself crawling across a scaled-down floor. The hallucinations became tactile. Surfaces no longer obeyed physics. I pressed my hand against the wall, and it gave way like jelly. The couch pulled me in. The floor rose in waves, knocking me off balance repeatedly. Objects breathed. The coffee table expanded and contracted rhythmically, pulsing like a living heart. Then came the voices. They became intelligible, sinister, not coming from anyone in the room, inside my head. Whispers telling me I would never escape, that this was my punishment, that nothing I did would matter, that the people I trusted would betray me. I begged for mercy, begged for clarity, but the voices mocked me, laughed, repeated phrases endlessly. You can't move, you can't speak, you can't stop it. I realized hours, maybe days, had passed. The sun shifted unnaturally through the blinds, stretching shadows into impossible angles. Every surface I looked at warped further. My phone vibrated, or maybe it didn't. I couldn't tell. I couldn't trust anything. My pulse hammered in my ears. My tongue felt glued to the roof of my mouth. My muscles spasmed in waves of unmanageable energy. I crawled to the bathroom for some semblance of control. The mirror greeted me with horror. My reflection wasn't mine. Pupils dilated until eyes were nothing but black pits. My mouth twisted into a grin that wasn't my own. Veins writhed beneath the skin, like snakes slithering under thin plastic. I tried to look away, but the reflection followed me. In the mirror, I aged decades in seconds, then reversed, then melted into a stream of multicolored liquid, reforming into a version of myself that was grotesque, alien, wrong. The hallucinations became cosmic. The ceiling peeled away, revealing a sky of churning, impossibly colored clouds, alive and shifting. The walls stretched endlessly, folding in on themselves in impossible Mobius patterns. I floated above the floor, weightless, falling slowly, endlessly, as if suspended in viscous air. Figures emerged from the void, humanoid yet indescribable, their forms fractal, faces multiplying, mouths opening in silence. I couldn't breathe, not physically, my lungs burned, but perception itself constricted. Time pressed inward, seconds fused into hours. I lost the sense of self completely. I became everything and nothing at once. My memories replayed in violent loops. Childhood, adolescence, moments of shame, rage and fear. Each iteration overlapped with hallucinated lifetimes. I existed in multiple bodies simultaneously, all suffering. I screamed. My throat refused coherent sound. My jaw locked. I clawed at the air and walls, knocking objects down, but everything was wrong. Gravity inconsistent, surfaces pulsing, shadows writhing independently, colors stabbing into my brain. The figures whispered, watching, patient, omnipresent. By what must have been the 3rd or 4th hour, or the 30th, I had no sense of reality at all. Every object, every sound, every sensation had become an extension of the trip itself. My mind looped endlessly, spinning through layers of hallucination, until I was convinced I would never be able to tell truth from illusion again. Eventually, fragments of reality returned. My bedroom came back, mostly. The air still smelled faintly of pine, but everything was off. Shadows moved subtly, walls hummed faintly. I was still hyper-aware of my heartbeat, my dry mouth, the subtle crawling sensation under my skin. My hands were trembling violently. I crawled to the phone, called a friend. My voice was slurred, fragmented, high-pitched, low, overlapping itself. I could barely form words. When they arrived, I realized how unmoored I had become. Each movement, each glance produced a new hallucination. Even someone I trusted felt alien, threatening, almost monstrous. The after effects lasted days. Sleep was impossible, food tasted wrong, every reflective surface was a potential trap. I remained hypersensitive to sound and light, shadows pulsed and shifted, auditory hallucinations occasionally returned, the whispers, the mockery, the voice of my own mind against me. Even weeks later, when the trip had chemically ended, fragments lingered. The terror didn't leave. I knew I had been close to breaking entirely. My sense of self, my ability to trust reality, had been pushed to the edge. And though I survived physically, the psychological scars remain. Even now, I cannot enter a quiet, dim room without a flicker of dread. Even now, I sometimes hear the faint echo of whispers that no one else can hear. Because 4-Ho MiPT doesn't just distort perception, it dissolves certainty. It tears open the seams of the mind, and it leaves you staring into the infinite, knowing that a small colored puff of smoke changed everything. I didn't know when the trip ended. That was the most terrifying part. There was no clean drop-off, no sudden clarity, no moment where I could say, now I'm sober. Instead, reality thinned gradually, like fog that never fully lifts. I remember lying on my bedroom floor, drenched in sweat, muscles twitching uncontrollably, staring at the ceiling while it folded in on itself over and over again. The breathing walls slowed, but they never fully stopped. The whispers softened, but they didn't go silent. At some point, hours later, maybe more, I realized I could no longer tell whether my eyes were open or closed. That realization sent a fresh wave of panic crashing through me. I tried to stand and fell immediately. My legs refused to coordinate. My arms shook violently, jerking in sharp, puppet-like motions. The room felt wrong in scale, too large one second and crushingly small the next. I was convinced my apartment had subtly rearranged itself while I wasn't looking, that doorways were in the wrong places, that the floor plan had shifted to trap me. My phone lay a few feet away. I crawled toward it. Each inch felt like crossing miles. The carpet rippled beneath my palms, fibers writhing like grass in a strong wind. My fingers phased through the phone twice before finally closing around it. The screen glowed too bright, painfully sharp, its light fracturing into prismatic shards that stabbed into my vision. I tried to call for help. The screen melted, icons stretched into grotesque caricatures of faces, letters crawled off the keyboard like insects. I dropped the phone, screaming, convinced it was another hallucination meant to trick me. Then it vibrated. A real vibration. I froze, heart slamming. Slowly, trembling, I picked it up again. This time, it stayed solid. I don't remember who I called. I barely remember what I said. I know my voice didn't sound human. It cracked, overlapped itself, slipped in pitch wildly. I remember repeating the same phrase over and over. Something's wrong. Something's very wrong. I can't stop it. The next memory is fragmented flashes, the front door opening and closing repeatedly, voices overlapping, hands on my shoulders, the world stretching sideways, being lifted, the hallway elongating impossibly, the sensation of falling upward. The ambulance ride exists only as impressions, red light smearing across everything, a siren that became a living thing, breathing and screaming in rhythm, a paramedic's face melting and reforming as he spoke, my own thoughts unraveling mid-sentence, dissolving into color and sensation. I was certain I was dying, not metaphorically, literally. I felt myself slipping away, identity tearing loose in pieces. I remember trying to explain that I was disappearing, that I was coming apart, but the words wouldn't assemble properly. Every attempt at speech collapsed into fragments. Then the hospital, or something pretending to be a hospital. The ceiling lights were too bright, too white, buzzing like insects trapped behind glass. Hallways stretched infinitely. Curtains breathed. I hallucinated patients sitting upright in bed staring directly at me, faces frozen in identical expressions of horror. They wheeled me into a room. The bed felt like it was swallowing me. I became convinced I had been admitted to the wrong place, not a hospital but some kind of containment facility. I was sure the staff weren't real doctors, but observers, that I had broken something fundamental in my mind, and now I was being studied. When they spoke to me, their words echoed multiple times, overlapping like delayed audio feedback. Their faces fractured, eyes duplicating, mouths stretching sideways. Every badge and piece of equipment pulsed with symbolic meaning I couldn't decipher. They asked me my name. I couldn't answer. The concept of a name felt distant, abstract. I knew I had one, but it belonged to someone else. I stared at my hands, turning them over slowly, convinced they weren't attached to me, that they were props placed there to keep me calm. They tried to keep me still. I panicked. The second they touched me, the trip surged again. The room peeled open. The walls dissolved into geometric tunnels. The doctors' bodies elongated into impossible proportions, joints bending backward, limbs splitting and rejoining like living diagrams. I fought, not consciously, instinctively. My body jerked, muscles firing chaotically. I remember shouting that they were lying, that this wasn't real, that I needed to wake up. I remember someone saying my heart rate was too high. Then the restraints. The moment they tightened, something inside me shattered. Being restrained convinced me beyond doubt that I had been captured in a hallucinated reality with no exit. The whispers returned in full force, mocking, calm, omnipresent. This is what happens when you look too far. You won't remember how to be human again. This is forever. They sedated me, or tried to. Sleep was not rest. It was layered hallucination. I dreamed I was waking up repeatedly in the same bed, each time realizing I was still trapped. I experienced dozens of false awakenings, each one convincing, each one collapsing into terror when the walls began breathing again or the staff's faces melted. I woke restrained more than once. Each time I believed it was the first time. Each time the panic was worse. The second day, or what I was later told was the second day, the hallucinations changed quality. Less visual spectacle, more convincing distortions. I held full conversations with people who weren't there. I believed family members had visited and abandoned me. I heard staff discussing my case in hushed tones, convinced. They were saying I'd never fully recover. I became obsessed with the idea that I had permanently damaged my mind, that the drug had pushed me past some invisible threshold. I asked repeatedly if I was still tripping. No one answered directly. That terrified me more than anything else. By the third day, the visuals were mostly gone, but reality still felt artificial, flat, like I was viewing the world through a pane of glass. My emotions lagged behind events. Sounds startled me violently. My thoughts felt fragile, like they might snap if I pushed them too hard. When they finally removed the restraints, I didn't feel relief. I felt exposed. I was discharged days later. Walking outside felt unreal. The sky looked too large. Sunlight felt aggressive, invasive. Every sound seemed too loud, too detailed. I was hyper-aware of everything. My heartbeat, my breathing, the way my feet contacted the ground. Sleep didn't come easily. When it did, it brought vivid dreams indistinguishable from hallucinations. I woke repeatedly convinced I was still in the hospital, still restrained, still looping. Weeks passed, the fear remained. I questioned reality constantly. I tested it obsessively, touching walls, counting objects, grounding myself again and again. Sometimes late at night, the geometry would feel wrong again. Shadows would linger too long. Colors would seem too saturated. I feared I had permanently altered my perception. Even now, I don't feel exactly the same. I hesitate in quiet rooms. I avoid mirrors when I'm tired. I don't trust my thoughts when they start looping. I carry the knowledge that my sense of self, something I always assumed was solid, can dissolve completely under the right conditions. Because that night didn't just show me terrifying hallucinations, it showed me how thin the boundary is between sanity and chaos, and how once you've crossed it, even briefly, you never forget what it felt like to be lost inside your own mind.